The FBI deputy director sat calmly at the witness table, reviewing his notes with the practiced focus of a man who'd spent decades in law enforcement. Adam Schiff approached the microphone with the confidence of a prosecutor about to destroy a right-wing conspiracy theorist. He had no idea that in 42 minutes his political career would be in ashes again. Some people never learn. You don't attack a man who has access to every file, every record, every buried secret in Washington. The Senate Judiciary Committee hearing on FBI oversight was supposed to be routine. Democrats would grandstand about political weaponization. Republicans would defend the Bureau and everyone would go home for lunch. But Adam Schiff had other plans. Deputy Director Bongino Schiff began, his voice dripping with theatrical disdain. Before we discuss FBI oversight, I think the American people deserve to know how a podcaster, a YouTube personality who was banned for spreading misinformation, somehow became the second highest ranking official in our nation's premier law enforcement agency. Bongino looked up from his notes, his expression neutral. 25 years of law enforcement had taught him to let the target talk. The more they talked, the more rope they gave you. I mean, Schiff continued, warming to his theme. Your qualification seems to be that you were good at what? Yelling into a microphone, selling supplements. Perhaps you could explain to this committee what exactly qualifies you to oversee federal investigations other than your willingness to parrot conspiracy theories. A few Democratic senators chuckled. Schiff was playing to the cameras as always. He leaned back, satisfied with his opening salvo. Bongino slowly removed his reading glasses, cleaned them with deliberate care, and put them back on. When he spoke, his Brooklyn accent was thick but controlled. Senator Schiff, thank you for that colorful introduction. Before I address your characterization of my career, I'd like to clarify something. You asked about FBI oversight. Correct. That's why we're here, Schiff said smugly. Outstanding. Then let's discuss oversight. Bongino opened a thick folder marked with FBI letterhead. Starting with the FBI's oversight of you. The smile vanished from Schiff's face. Excuse me. You see, Senator, when you demand testimony from the FBI about our operations, you open the door to discussing all our operations, including. Bongino pulled out a document. Investigation File 2019, Louisiana, 47823. Are you familiar with that case number? Schiff's attorney, seated behind him, leaned forward to whisper urgently. Schiff waved him off. I'm not aware of any really, because this is the FBI's investigation into systematic leaking of classified information from the House Intelligence Committee between 2017 and 2020. Your committee, Senator, your chairmanship. Bongino looked up. Would you like me to refresh your memory? The hearing room, which had been buzzing with side conversations, went quiet. Several Democratic senators suddenly found their phones very interesting. Deputy Director Schiff tried to recover. You can't simply make unfounded accusations. Unfounded? Bino's voice hardened. Senator, I spent 12 years in the Secret Service protecting presidents. I spent 4 years with the NYPD protecting New Yorkers. I don't make unfounded accusations. I present evidence, which coincidentally is exactly what FBI oversight looks like. He pulled out another document. This is a declassified summary of leak investigations during your tenure as Intelligence Committee Chairman. 27 separate incidents of classified information appearing in the media within 48 hours of your committee briefings. 27 Senator in Brooklyn. We call that a pattern. In the FBI, we call it probable cause. Senator Lindsey Graham, the committee chairman, leaned into his microphone. Deputy Director, are you saying there's an active FBI investigation into Senator Schiff? Bongino turned to Graham with professional courtesy. Senator Graham, I'm responding to Senator Schiff's request for FBI oversight. He asked about our operations. I'm providing that oversight, including our investigations into the illegal disclosure of classified information. If Senator Schiff would prefer I not discuss FBI investigations in this setting, he's welcome to withdraw his request for testimony. All eyes turned to Schiff. He was trapped. Withdraw and look guilty. Continue and face whatever Bongino had in those folders. I have nothing to hide. Schiff stammered. Excellent, Bongino said with the thin smile of a predator who just heard his prey step into the trap. Then let's continue with the oversight you requested. Page 1 of 27. This should be educational. He began reading from the file, his voice carrying the mechanical precision of a police report. January 15, 2019. Classified briefing on Russian military movements attended by 6 committee members. January 16, 2019. 6:47 p.m. CNN reports details from said briefing. Analysis indicates 94% correlation between briefing content and media report. Preliminary investigation suggests this is outrageous. Schiff interrupted. You're attempting to intimidate a United States senator. Bongino looked up genuinely puzzled. Intimidate senator? You subpoenaed me. You demanded I testify about FBI operations. I'm complying with your subpoena. Unless, he paused for effect, unless you only wanted to hear about certain FBI operations. The ones that fit your narrative. Perhaps the Brooklyn was coming out now. The street fighter who'd walked beats in New York's toughest neighborhoods. See where I come from? When you pick a fight, you better be ready for what comes next. You wanted oversight. You're getting it. Every single page. He turned to the next document. January 23, Road, 2019. Closed session briefing on surveillance techniques. January 24, 2019. Washington Post article containing verbatim quotes from classified briefing. FBI linguistic analysis confirms 98.7% probability quotes came from official transcript. Only committee members had access to that transcript. Schiff's face had gone from red to pale. His chief of staff was frantically typing on her phone, probably trying to get guidance from party leadership. But here's the interesting part. Bongino continued pulling out a new document. This is a memo from the Obama administration. Yes, Senator. The Obama administration dated November 2016. Subject concerns regarding Representative Schiff's handling of classified information. Would you like me to read it? That's classified. Schiff blurted out. Bongino raised an eyebrow. Actually, it was declassified last month. Funny how you knew it existed. Though, almost like you'd seen it before when it was classified. The trap had been sprung. Schiff had just admitted to knowledge of a classified document he shouldn't have known about. Let me read from President Obama's Deputy National Security Advisor. Bongino continued. Representative Schiff's tendency to brief media outlets on sensitive intelligence matters poses a significant risk to sources and methods. Recommend limited access to certain programs until behavior is corrected. He looked up at Schiff. The Obama administration thought you were a security risk. The Obama administration, Senator. Not exactly a right-wing conspiracy. Is it? The hearing room was in shock. Democrats were whispering urgently among themselves. Republicans were trying not to look too pleased. The FBI officials in the gallery sat stone-faced. But their presence now made sense. They were here to witness their deputy director defend the bureau against a man who'd attacked them for years. We're just getting started, Bongino said, reaching for another folder. You wanted FBI oversight? Let me show you what real oversight looks like. No YouTube required. The clock read 10:31 a.m. They were only 13 minutes in. And Adam Schiff already looked like he'd aged 5 years. Bongino pulled out a second folder. This one marked with declassified stamps that looked fresh enough to still be wet. The deputy director's movements were deliberate, methodical, the way a prosecutor lays out evidence before a jury. Senator Schiff. He began his tone conversational. You've spent years accusing the FBI of being politicized. So, let's examine that claim, but let's do it with something you might not be familiar with, actual evidence. Schiff tried to regain his footing. Deputy Director. This hearing is about FBI oversight. Not exactly right. Bongino interrupted. FBI oversight includes our obligation to investigate crimes. All crimes by anyone, including members of Congress who think they're above the law. He opened the folder. This is fun. FBI case filed 2020 District of Columbia, 18739. Investigation into unauthorized disclosure of classified information specifically regarding FISA applications. You remember FISA, don't you, Senator? You wrote a whole memo about it. The Schiff memo was entirely proper. Was it? Bongino pulled out a document. Because the FISA court disagrees. This is a letter from Presiding Judge James Boasberg dated December 2019. Quote, the court is troubled by significant misrepresentations in congressional communications regarding these proceedings. He's talking about your memo. Senator Chuck Grassley, the ranking member, leaned forward. Deputy Director, are you saying the FISA court formally rebuked Senator Schiff? I'm reading from their letter. Senator Grassley. But it gets better. Bongino flipped to the next page. The FBI was required to investigate how classified FISA information ended up in media reports. Our cyber forensics team did something interesting. They analyzed the linguistic patterns in the leaks. Turns out everyone has a writing fingerprint like DNA but for sentences. He pulled out a chart. This shows linguistic analysis of Washington Post articles containing FISA information compared to statements and memos from Senator Schiff's office. 87% correlation. That's not coincidence. Senator, that's what we call consciousness of guilt. Schiff was gripping the table now. This is McCarthyism. You're using the FBI to do what? Bongino's voice dropped to a growl. To do our job to investigate federal crimes. You see, Senator, this is the problem with people like you. You think accountability is persecution. You think the law doesn't apply to you. Well, I got news for you. It does. He pulled out another document. Let's talk about your greatest hits. The Russia collusion investigation. You told the American people for 3 years that you had more than circumstantial evidence of collusion. Remember that the Mueller investigation found no collusion. Zero. Zilch. Nada. Bongino held up the Mueller report. Page 2. The investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government. But you knew that, didn't you? Because I have here. He pulled out another document. Your emails to Speaker Pelosi from March 2019. The room held its breath. You wrote, quote, Nancy, the Mueller report is going to be a disappointment on collusion. We need to manage expectations while maintaining pressure. You knew. You knew there was nothing. But you lied anyway. Those emails were illegally obtained. Wrong again, Bongino said cheerfully. They were provided by Speaker Pelosi's office last month. Turns out even she got tired of cleaning up your messes. The Democratic side of the aisle erupted. Senators were demanding to know if this was true. Schiff looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. But wait, there's more. Bongino continued now, clearly enjoying himself. Let's discuss your relationship with the media. Specifically your burner phones. I don't have any burner. Really? Bongino pulled out a technical report because the FBI's technical surveillance unit says otherwise. 3 prepaid phones purchased with cash. All pinging cell towers near your offices and residence. All making calls to specific reporters. Want to know how we found them? He didn't wait for an answer. Your mistake was using them from your car. Modern vehicles are computers on wheels. Your Tesla, Senator. It logs every phone that connects to its Bluetooth. Even the ones that don't successfully pair. We got the logs legally with a warrant before you ask. Bongino pulled out a call log. October 15, 2020. Burner phone ending in 4827 calls Ken Delanian at NBC. 17 minutes. October 16. Ken Delanian publishes story about intelligence briefing that happened October 15. That's some coincidence. This is a witch hunt. No, Senator. A witch hunt is when you investigate without evidence. This is what we call a slam dunk. Onino's Brooklyn accent thickened. You see, in the NYPD, we had a saying, you can't fix stupid. You conducted a years-long campaign of leaking classified information, attacking law enforcement, and lying to the American people. And you did it sloppy. He pulled out the thickest document yet. This is a summary of financial investigations. Turns out those speaking fees you collected from think tanks. The ones funded by foreign nationals. That's a problem, especially when those same think tanks were paying for opposition research that you then leaked. Senator Ted Cruz spoke up. Deputy Director, are you alleging that Senator Schiff was essentially paid to leak information? I'm not alleging anything, Senator Cruz. I'm reading from FBI investigative files that Senator Schiff demanded I discuss in this oversight hearing. Bongino turned to Schiff. You wanted transparency. You're getting it. The FBI officials in the gallery were no longer stone-faced. Several were openly smirking. These were agents who'd been smeared by Schiff for years. Called corrupt and politicized. They were watching their deputy director return fire with interest. Let's talk about the whistleblower. Bongino continued. You know the one you coordinated with. The one whose complaint your staff helped write. That's been debunked. By who you? Bongino laughed a harsh sound. I've got the text messages. Senator, your staff to the whistleblower. Adam wants more specific allegations in paragraph 3. That's not whistleblowing. That's script writing. He pulled out yet another file. But here's my favorite part. The FBI has been investigating all of this for years. Quietly, professionally, building cases. And you know what kept happening? Every time we'd get close to something, there'd be a leak to the media about the investigation. Almost like someone was tipping off the targets. Bongino's smile was predatory now. Guess whose phone numbers showed up in the call logs of the leak recipients? The hearing room was dead silent except for the scratching of reporters' pens and the clicking of keyboards. This wasn't a hearing anymore. It was a public execution. One more thing before we move on. Bongino said, "You mentioned my podcast implying I'm just some media personality. Let me educate you on something. I've been in law enforcement for 25 years. I've protected presidents from both parties. I've investigated federal crimes. I've testified in court hundreds of times. You're a politician who plays prosecutor on TV. So, when it comes to understanding law enforcement, maybe you should listen instead of lecture." He closed the folder with a snap. "We're 24 minutes in. Senator, 18 more to go. You sure you want to continue this oversight hearing? Because I've got 5 more folders here. And they get worse." Schiff's lawyer was now actively pulling at his client's sleeve, urging him to invoke some kind of privilege. Any kind of privilege. But Schiff sat frozen, trapped between his ego and his survival instinct. The clock read 10:42 a.m. in the gallery. Several Democratic staffers were already updating their resumes on their phones. They knew a sinking ship when they saw one. Bongino opened the third folder with the practiced ease of a man who'd presented evidence in court more times than he could count. But this time, there was something different in his demeanor. A coldness that made even the Republican senators shift uncomfortably. "Senator Schiff," he began, "let's discuss what FBI agents call pattern evidence. You see, criminals think they're smart, but they're usually just repetitive. They develop habits, signatures. You turned leaking into an art form." He pulled out a chart that looked like something from a corporate presentation. Clean, professional, and devastating. This represents every classified briefing you attended from 2017 to 2023. The red dots, those are media stories containing classified information. Notice anything? The chart showed a clear pattern. Red dots clustered within 24-48 hours of every briefing shift attended. It looked like measles on a calendar. Statistical analysis shows the probability of this being coincidence is approximately 0.3%. Bongino continued, "That's 30.000 of 1%. Senator, in layman's terms, you're guilty as hell." Schiff tried to interrupt. "Correlation doesn't equal causation." "Nice try. But we've got more than correlation." Bongino pulled out a thumb drive. "This contains video depositions from 6 former members of your staff. All given under oath. All with immunity deals. Want to know what they said?" Without waiting for an answer, he clicked a remote. A screen lowered behind him and suddenly a young woman's face appeared on the monitor. The label read "Former Intelligence Committee Staffer Identity Protected." The video played. Mr. Schiff would hold what he called media strategy meetings. After every classified briefing, he'd identify what he called nuggets that could be shared with friendly reporters. He said it was our patriotic duty to ensure the public knew what was happening. Classification be damned. The room gasped. Bongino paused the video. "That's witness 1. Want to see the other 5? They all tell the same story. You ran a leak factory, Senator. An assembly line of classified disclosure." Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana spoke up in his distinctive drawl. "Deputy Director, if I may ask, how long has the FBI known about this?" Bongino turned to Kennedy with respect. "Senator, we've been building this case since 2018. Methodically, carefully. We don't do political hit jobs at the FBI. We do investigations. Real ones." He turned back to Schiff. "But here's where it gets really interesting. We didn't just rely on witness testimony. We got creative." He pulled out another document. "Ever heard of linguistic forensics? It's fascinating stuff. Every person has unique writing patterns, favorite phrases, sentence structures, word choices. It's like a fingerprint." He displayed another chart. "We analyzed every leak to major publications. Washington Post, New York Times, CNN.com. Then we compared them to your speeches, your memos, your tweets. The overlap is remarkable. You literally couldn't help but use the same phrases. For instance," Bongino continued, "you love the phrase deeply troubling. Used it in 73% of your public statements. Guess what phrase appeared in 71% of the leaked stories?" Or how about raises serious questions? You use that construction constantly. So did the leaks. Schiff's attorney finally found his voice. Deputy Director, my client doesn't have to sit here and take this. Bongino finished. Actually, he does. He subpoenaed me. He demanded this hearing. He wanted to grandstand about FBI oversight. Well, counsel, this is what oversight looks like when the overseer is dirty. He pulled out a new document. Let's talk about March 22, 2019. Closed briefing on surveillance techniques used against terrorist cells. Highly classified. Need to know only. 4 hours later, you're having dinner at Cafe Milano in Georgetown. Want to know who you dined with? Bongino didn't wait. Ken Delanian from NBC, Natasha Bertrand from Politico, and Adam Antus from The New Yorker. All three published stories about surveillance techniques within 72 hours. What are the odds? This is guilt by association. No, this is guilt by reservation. Bongino held up a receipt. You paid corporate card from your campaign account. $847. That's an expensive leak session. Senator. The younger FBI agents in the gallery were taking notes. This was a masterclass in investigation presentation. Methodical, relentless, and utterly professional. But my favorite, Bongino said with a cold smile, is this one. He pulled out a printed email. October 2019. Email from you to your chief of staff. Quote, need to get the Ukraine information out there before the Republicans can spin it. Set up the usual dinner. Make sure Ken and Natasha can make it. He looked up. The usual dinner. You had a regular leak schedule like a TV show. Must Leak TV starring Adam Schiff. Senator Marsha Blackburn interjected. Deputy Director, did these leaks damage national security? Senator Blackburn, I can't discuss the full damage assessment in open session. But I can say this: sources were compromised. Methods were exposed. Allies stopped sharing intelligence. The damage was real and lasting. Bongino turned back to Schiff. And now the cold anger was visible. You see, Senator, I've spent my career protecting people. Presidents. Citizens. This country. You spent your career protecting yourself. Building your brand. Becoming a resistance hero. And you did it by betraying the trust of the American people. He pulled out one final document from this section. This is from a foreign intelligence service. One of our closest allies. They call it the Schiff problem. And they created a whole protocol for sharing intelligence with the US that specifically excluded your committee. Our allies didn't trust you with their secrets. Think about that. Foreign governments trusted Donald Trump more than they trusted you. The hit landed. Schiff visibly flinched. But here's the kicker. Bongino continued. We have recordings. Legal ones obtained with proper warrants. Your staff meetings where you discussed what to leak. Your phone calls setting up media dinners. Your strategy sessions on how to maximize damage. He pulled out a transcript. This is you, Senator. Recorded on April 3, 2020. Quote, I don't care if it's classified. If it hurts Trump, it goes to the Times. Make sure they know it came from the committee. So they protect the source. Your voice. Your words. Your crime. The hearing room was in chaos. Democrats were fleeing for the exits. Republicans were calling for investigations. The media was frantically typing. Schiff sat slumped in his chair. His Hollywood veneer cracked beyond repair. His attorney was whispering urgently. Probably advising him to take the fifth. 31 minutes. Bongino noted, checking his watch. 11 to go. We haven't even gotten to the financial crimes yet. You still want to talk about FBI oversight? Senator, because oversight is a two-way street. And you're about to get run over by traffic from both directions. Bongino reached for the fourth folder. But paused, looking directly at Schiff, with something that might have been pity if it hadn't been so cold. You know, Senator, when the House censured you in 2023, they only had part of the story. Like looking at an iceberg from above. The real damage that was all underneath. He opened the folder. Let me show you what they missed. The document he pulled out was thick bound like a legal brief. This is the FBI's Financial Crimes Division analysis of your activities. See, leaking classified information is bad. But taking money to do it, that's a whole other level. Schiff's lawyer stood up. Mr. Chairman, I object to this characterization. Sit down, counsel. Senator Graham said firmly. Your client demanded this hearing. He'll get what he asked for. Bongino continued. Let's talk about the speaking fees. Between 2017 and 2024, you collected $3.7 million in speaking fees. That's not illegal. But here's where it gets interesting. $21 million came from organizations funded by foreign nationals. Organizations that just happened to be interested in U.S. intelligence matters. He pulled out a spreadsheet. The Atlantic Council, $400. The German Marshall Fund, $350. The Qatar Foundation, $500. All legitimate organizations, all with foreign funding, all desperately interested in the classified briefings you were receiving. Those were legitimate speaking, were they? Bongino pulled out another document. Because here's your speaking schedule. Notice anything interesting. Every single speech came within 72 hours of a classified briefing on the region that organization cared about. Brief on Middle East policy speech to Qatar Foundation. Brief on European security. German Marshall Fund. It's like a menu order. A briefing. Get a leak. Senator Josh Hawley leaned forward. Deputy Director, are you suggesting Senator Schiff was essentially selling classified information? I'm presenting evidence. Senator Hawley, the conclusions draw themselves. Bongino pulled out bank records. These are wire transfers. The payments always came after the speeches. But here's the interesting part. Bonus payments that correlated with media coverage. Bigger story. Bigger bonus. He displayed another chart. We tracked it. Average speaking fee when no major story followed $50. Average fee when a major leak occurred. $150. Music. That's a hell of a coincidence. Senator Schiff was white as a sheet. Now, this is circumstantial. Is it because we have emails? Bongino pulled out printed messages from the Qatar Foundation to your speaking agent. Quote, Mr. Schiff's presentation was extremely valuable. The insights on U.S. intelligence assessments were particularly appreciated. Bonus approved. End quote. The gallery was stirring. Even Democrats who had remained were looking disgusted. But let's get back to your censure. Bongino continued. The House knew you lied about Russian collusion. They knew you leaked, but they didn't know about this. He pulled out a new document. FBI surveillance of known foreign intelligence assets. Legal surveillance. I should note. Visa warrants. And everything. Guess who showed up meeting with these assets? He let the question hang. Your chief of staff. Your communications director. Your legislative aide. Your entire inner circle was meeting with people our counterintelligence division was watching. At what point does incompetence become complicity? You're suggesting I'm a foreign agent. Schiff tried to sound outraged. But his voice cracked. I'm suggesting you're for sale. Bongino shot back. And the biters knew it. We have communications intercepts. Legal ones. Where foreign nationals discuss how to incentivize you. They called you accessible. And in the intelligence world, that's a polite way of saying corrupt. He pulled out another file. Let's talk about your boy Eric Churla. The whistleblower. You know. The one whose name everyone knows but pretends not to. We've been watching him, too. Turns out he had some interesting friends. Friends in Ukrainian think tanks. Friends who paid for opposition research. Friends who met with your staff 27 times in 2019. The whistleblower's identity is protected. From retaliation, not from investigation. Bongino corrected. And when the whistleblower is coordinating with foreign nationals and congressional staff to influence U.S. elections. That protection has limits. He pulled out a timeline. July 2019. Kiera Mela meets with Ukrainian nationals in D.C. July 26. Your staff meets with Kiera. August 12. Kiera contacts your committee. August 28. Complaint filed. September 9. You tweet about Ukraine before anyone knows about the complaint. It's like watching a choreographed dance. A corrupt one. Senator Ron Johnson spoke up. Deputy Director. What you're describing sounds like a conspiracy to manipulate intelligence for political purposes. That's exactly what it was. Senator Johnson. And here's the proof. Bongino pulled out a document marked with Ukrainian government seals. This is from their anti-corruption bureau. They investigated the think tanks that were paying for opposition research. Guess whose name keeps coming up in their financial records? Our friend Senator Schiff. The room exploded. This was beyond leaking. This was beyond lying. This was approaching espionage. You want to know why the House censure was just the tip of the iceberg? Bongino's voice rose. Because they didn't have what we have. 7 years of investigation. Thousands of documents. Financial records. Communication intercepts. Witness testimony. You didn't just lie to Congress, Senator. You sold out your country for speaking fees and cable news hits. He pulled out one final document from this section. This is from the CIA. Even they flagged you as a security risk. The CIA Senator. John Brennan's CIA. They wouldn't share certain intelligence with your committee because they assessed you as likely to disclose for personal gain. When even Brennan thinks you're dirty, you've got problems. Schiff's attorney was pulling at his arm now, desperately trying to get him to leave. But Schiff sat frozen, watching his career cremated in real time. 37 minutes. Bongino noted. 5 to go. One more folder. The worst one. You sure you want to continue, Senator? Because what comes next makes everything else look like jaywalking. Bongino hefted the final folder noticeably thicker than the others. His expression had shifted from cold professionalism to something more personal disgust mixed with a prosecutor's satisfaction at finally cornering a target. Senator Schiff. This last section is what we call a pattern of deception. It's one thing to lie once, maybe twice, but you turned it into a lifestyle. He opened the folder. Let's count your greatest hits. He pulled out a bound document that looked like a small phone book. This is a compilation of every public statement you made about Russian collusion between 2017 and 2019. 847 statements. Television appearances. Tweets. Speeches. Press releases. Our analysts went through every single one. Flipping it open. He began March 20, 2017. MSNBC. There is more than circumstantial evidence of collusion. March 22, 2017. CNN. I have seen evidence of collusion that is damning. I'm a March 26, 2017 at ABC. The evidence of coordination between the Trump campaign and Russia is overwhelming. He looked up. Want to know how many of these statements were true? 0. Not one. You lied 847 times. Senator. That's impressive. Most criminals can't keep their stories straight for 5 minutes. You managed 3 years. The intelligence suggested. No, it didn't. Bongino cut him off. And you know how I know? Because I have your emails to Nancy Pelosi. The ones she turned over last month. Should I read them? Without waiting, he pulled out printed emails. January 15, 2018. You to Pelosi. Nancy. The collusion angle is weak but politically useful. We should continue pushing the narrative while investigating other avenues. You knew it was weak. You said it was weak. But you went on TV that night and called it a slam dunk. He pulled out another March 3, 2019. You to Pelosi. Mueller is going to disappoint on collusion. We need to prepare alternative narratives. Perhaps focus on obstruction. You knew Mueller had nothing. But you went on CNN that same week and promised bombshells. The Democratic senators still present were visibly uncomfortable. Several were texting furiously, probably trying to distance themselves from Schiff. But here's my favorite. Bongino continued. April 18, 2019. Mueller report released. You to your chief of staff. We need to find something in this report to justify 3 years of claims. Look for anything that can be spun as collusion. Spun. Senator. Not found. Spun. He pulled out a video tablet. But lies about collusion were just the appetizer. Let's talk about your lies during impeachment. This is you on September 26, 2019 reading the Trump-Zelensky call transcript. Except you weren't reading it. Were you? You were doing your own little one-man show. The video played. Schiff's voice filled the room dramatically, interpreting the call with added sinister implications that weren't in the actual transcript. That's not parody, Bongino said when it finished. That's fabrication. In a formal congressional proceeding, you lied to Congress while leading an impeachment inquiry. In most places, that's called perjury. I was making a point. You were making things up like you always do. Bongino pulled out another document. FBI analysis of your public statements shows you use what we call weasel words to avoid outright lies while creating false impressions. Suggests, indicates, raises questions, appears to show. You're like a used car salesman who says the engine seems to work. He pulled out a thick transcript. This is your closed-door testimony from December 2017. When Republicans asked you to present your evidence of collusion, you said it was classified. But we checked. You had no classified evidence. You lied under oath to your own colleagues. Senator Tom Cotton interjected. Deputy Director is lying to Congress in closed session. Still perjury. Yes, Senator Cotton. Same penalties apply. Bongino turned back to Schiff. 5 years in federal prison. If you're curious, per count. The blood had completely drained from Schiff's face. His carefully styled hair was disheveled from running his hands through it. The Hollywood polish was gone, replaced by the look of a man watching his life collapse. But let's talk about the ultimate lie. Bongino continued. The one that really shows who you are. October 2019. You told the American people you had no contact with the whistleblower before the complaint was filed. That was a lie. You told them you didn't know the whistleblower's identity. Also a lie. You told them the complaint was spontaneous and organic. Lie number 3. He pulled out communication logs. Your staff met with the whistleblower 8 times. You personally called him twice. You edited his complaint. You coached him on testimony. And then you had the balls to stand up in Congress and claim you were just a passive recipient of information. The whistleblower process is supposed to be about reporting wrongdoing, not manufacturing it. Bongino's Brooklyn accent thickened with anger. You see, in real law enforcement, we have a name for what you did. It's called subordination of perjury. It's what mob lawyers do when they coach witnesses to lie. Congratulations, Senator. You've achieved mob lawyer status. He pulled out one final item of photo. This is from the Congressional Baseball Game 2018. You're shaking hands with James Comey. Remember what you told him? We do because he wrote it down. You said, "Don't worry, Jim, we'll get Trump one way or another. The truth is what we make it." He thought you were joking. You weren't. The clock on the wall showed 10:59 a.m. 1 minute to go. Last item, Bongino said, pulling out a single sheet of paper. This is a letter from the California Bar Association. They are opening an investigation into your conduct. Turns out lying to courts, Congress, and the American people violates legal ethics. Who knew? He closed the folder with finality. 41 minutes of truth. Senator, after 7 years of your lies, you wanted FBI oversight. You got it. Every agency in the federal government has a file on you. Criminal referrals are being prepared. Bar complaints are being filed. Your own party is abandoning you. The clock struck 11:40 a.m. We're done here, Bongino said, starting to pack his folders. Unless you have more questions about FBI oversight. Because I've got about a dozen more boxes of evidence back at the Hoover building. We could do this all day. As Bongino finished packing his folders, Schiff made one last desperate attempt to salvage something from the wreckage. Duty director, he said, his voice. This is nothing but political revenge. You're a Trump loyalist using the FBI to Bongino stop packing. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. When he turned back to face Schiff, the professional mask was gone. This was personal. Political revenge. Bongino's voice was quiet. Dangerous. Senator, let me tell you about political. For 12 years, I protected presidents, Republicans and Democrats. I stood post in the rain, the snow, the heat. I missed my kids' birthdays, anniversaries, holidays. You know why? Because the job mattered more than politics. He walked back to the witness table. His movements deliberate. I protected Barack Obama with the same dedication I protected George Bush. I would have taken a bullet for either of them. That's what real service looks like. Not the self-serving theater you call public service. The room was dead silent. Even the reporters had stopped typing. But you, Bongino continued, you called agents like me jackbooted thugs. You said we were Trump's Gestapo. You compared us to Nazi senator. Men and women who risk their lives every day to protect this country. And you called us Nazis. He pulled out a printed tweet. October 15, 2020. You tweeted, the Secret Service has been corrupted by Trump. They're more interested in protecting him than protecting democracy. That's what you said about people like me. People who spent years protecting presidents regardless of party. His hands were steady, but his voice carried years of suppressed anger. You know what we were doing while you were tweeting? We were stopping assassination attempts. We were investigating threats. We were protecting democracy by protecting its leaders. All of them, even the ones we disagreed with. Senator John Kennedy spoke softly. Deputy Director, did Senator Schiff's rhetoric impact agent morale? Bongino turned to him. Senator Kennedy, I had agents come to me in tears. Good agents. Dedicated professionals. They'd spent years serving their country only to be called fascists by a congressman who wouldn't last 5 minutes in their shoes. Yeah, it impacted morale. He turned back to Schiff. But here's what really gets me. While you were calling us corrupt, you were the one taking money from foreign interests. While you were accusing us of politicization, you were leaking classified information for political gain. While you were claiming to defend democracy, you were undermining it for cable news hits and speaking fees. He pulled out another document. This is a memo from President Obama's Secret Service detail leader. Even he was concerned about your rhetoric. Quote, Representative Schiff's continued attacks on the service are demoralizing agents and potentially compromising security. Obama's own detail leader thought you were a threat to security. I was holding power accountable. You were holding press conferences. Bongino shot back. There's a difference. Accountability requires honesty, evidence, integrity. You had none of those. You had ambition and a Twitter account. He pulled out a photo. This is Agent Timothy McCarthy. He took a bullet for President Reagan. This is Agent Jerry Parr. He saved Reagan's life. This is Agent Larry Buendorf. He stopped an assassination attempt on President Ford. These are the people you called fascists. Heroes who put their lives on the line regardless of politics. His voice dropped even lower. You know what we called you in the service? The leaker? Every agent knew if you were in a briefing, it would be in the Post the next day. We had to change security protocols because of you. Think about that. The Secret Service had to protect information from a United States congressman. Lie. Really? Bongino pulled out an internal Secret Service memo January 2018 due to repeated unauthorized disclosures following briefings attended by Representative Schiff recommend limiting information shared with House Intelligence Committee to basic overviews only. You were a security risk, Senator. To the people protecting the president. He pulled out one more item. A small worn photo. This is my daughter. When she was 8, she asked me why some man on TV was calling Daddy a Nazi. 8-year-old Senator. I had to explain to my 8-year-old daughter that sometimes people lie for political gain. That some people value power more than truth. The personal nature of the attack had shifted the entire dynamic. This wasn't about politics anymore. This was about honor service and the damage done by a man who confused fame with duty. You want to know the difference between us? Bongino asked. I've been in the room with presidents discussing the most sensitive national security issues. Never leaked. Never sold out. Never put politics above country. You couldn't keep a secret if your life depended on it because to you secrets are currency. Information is power and power is all you ever cared about. He began packing again. I'm done dignifying you with responses. Senator, you're not worth the anger. You're just another corrupt politician who got caught. The only difference is you wrapped yourself in righteousness while you did it. As he headed for the door, he turned back one last time. Oh, and Senator, that bar complaint I mentioned. It includes a recommendation for disbarment. Turns out the California bar takes a dim view of lawyers who lie to courts, leak classified information, and violate their oath of office. Good luck with that. The FBI officials in the gallery stood as one as their deputy director prepared to leave. It was a show of solidarity that spoke louder than words. One last thing, Bongino said from the doorway. The agents you smeared, the ones you called corrupt, they're the ones who built these cases against you professionally, thoroughly, legally. They didn't do it for revenge. They did it because it was their job. Because unlike you, they actually believe in justice. He looked around the room one final time. This hearing is over. Not because I say so, but because there's nothing left of Senator Schiff to question. Just an empty suit where a public servant should have been. As Bongino reached the door, Senator Graham called out, Deputy Director, if you could remain for just a moment more. Senator Schiff appears to have something to say. Bongino turned back slowly. Schiff had risen from his seat, his face a mixture of desperation and defiance. This is all a setup. Schiff stammered. You planned this. You and Trump, and stop. Bongino's voice cut through the rambling like a blade. Just stop. You're embarrassing yourself more than usual. I mean, he walked back to the witness table, but remained standing. A setup. Senator, you subpoenaed me. You demanded this hearing. You chose to attack me personally. All I did was come prepared. In Brooklyn, we call that bringing receipts. But the timing. Bongino laughed a harsh sound. You mean how I managed to have all these documents ready? It's called preparation. See, unlike you, I actually do my homework. When I got your subpoena 3 weeks ago, I knew exactly what you'd try. The same thing you always try. Grandstand, attack, play, victim. So I prepared every document, every email, every recording, all legal, all devastating, all true. Senator Cruz leaned into his microphone. Deputy Director, for the record, did you coordinate this testimony with anyone outside the FBI? No, Senator. This was entirely internal FBI work. 7 years of investigations, thousands of man-hours, multiple field offices. We didn't need political help. We had something better. Evidence. Schiff's lawyer stood up. My client reserves all rights and privileges. Sit down, counsel. Bongino interrupted. Your client waived his privileges when he demanded I testify about FBI operations. You don't get to punch someone and then claim immunity when they hit back. He turned to address the full committee. Senators, what you've seen today is what the FBI does when politicians think they're above the law. We investigate, we document, we build cases, and when someone is stupid enough to demand we present our findings in public, we do that, too. Pulling out his phone, he showed the screen to the room. This is interesting. While we've been talking, 3 news organizations have filed FOIA requests for all the documents I referenced today. The Washington Post, the New York Times, and ironically, CNN, the same outlet Senator Schiff leaked to for years. Looks like they smell blood in the water. From the gallery, someone called out it was a reporter from Politico. Deputy Director, will these documents be released? FOIA is FOA. Bongino replied, if properly requested and not under seal, they'll be released according to law. Transparency. Right, Senator Schiff. That's what you always said you wanted. Schiff had slumped back in his chair. His chief of staff was showing him something on her phone. Probably the real-time news coverage. His face went even paler. Oh, that's right, Bongino said, noticing their distraction. T-Pan has been broadcasting this live. Current viewership is. He checked his phone. 3.7 million. That's a lot of people watching your career die in real time. Senator. He pulled out one final document from his briefcase. I wasn't going to show this one, but since you mentioned setups. He held up a printed email. This is from you to your staff dated 3 weeks ago when you issued the subpoena. Quote, Bongino is just a podcaster playing cop. I'll destroy him in the hearing and show Trump's FBI for what it is. End quote. The irony was lost on no one. You thought you were setting me up. Bongino continued. You thought you'd get some viral moments. Embarrass the Trump administration. Maybe get a book deal out of it. You thought I'd be unprepared. Emotional. Easy debate. You thought wrong. He looked directly at the C-SPAN camera. To everyone watching, this is what accountability looks like. Not the political theater version where everyone plays their role and nothing changes. Real accountability where evidence matters. Where lies have consequences. Where 7 years of corruption gets exposed in 42 minutes. Turning back to Schiff one last time. Bongino's expression softened slightly. Not with sympathy, but with the satisfaction of a job completed. You know what your real problem was. Senator? You believed your own press. You thought you were untouchable. The hero of the resistance. The man who would take down Trump. You forgot that in America, nobody's above the law. Not presidents. Not senators. Not even California Democrats with good hair and better connections. He picked up his briefcase. The FBI will continue its investigations. The Bar Association will continue its review. The voters will make their own judgments. And you'll be remembered as a cautionary tale about what happens when ambition replaces integrity. As he headed for the door again, he stopped and turned back one more time. Oh, and Senator, that dinner at Café Milano with the reporters. The one you thought was off the record. The waiter was one of ours. Consensual monitoring. We have the whole conversation. You might want to tell your lawyer about that. Discovery is going to be at the hearing room erupted as Bongino left. Democrats were in full damage control mode. Republicans were calling for immediate investigations. The media was in a feeding frenzy. But the most telling reaction came from the gallery. As Bongino passed, the FBI official stood again. So did several Capitol Police officers. Even some Democratic staffers rose, a sign of respect for someone who had done what they'd all wanted to do for years. Hold Adam Schiff accountable. Outside in the hallway, Bongino was immediately surrounded by reporters. He pushed through them without comment until one shouted question made him stop. Deputy Director, what's next for Senator Schiff? Bongino turned his expression unreadable. What's next? That's up to the justice system. The FBI presents facts. Courts determine guilt. Voters pass judgment. I've done my job. The rest is up to them. Will you be pressing charges? The FBI doesn't press charges. We investigate and refer. Multiple referrals have already been made to the appropriate authorities. Due process will take its course. As he walked away, one last reporter called out, "Any regrets about destroying a United States senator?" Bongino stopped, turned, and smiled, a real smile this time. Not the predatory grin from the hearing room. "I didn't destroy anyone. I just turned on the lights." If Senator Schiff couldn't survive the exposure that's on him in Brooklyn. We have a saying, you can't break what's already broken. I just showed everyone the cracks. He walked away, leaving behind a Capitol in chaos. A senator in ruins and a clear message. The FBI was done being anyone's punching bag. Brooklyn rules now applied in Washington, and Dan Bongino was just getting started. Chapter 48 hours later. The fallout was swift and merciless. Within 24 hours, 17 Democratic senators had called for Schiff's resignation. The California Democratic Party held an emergency meeting and voted to withdraw support. 3 major newspapers, including the Los Angeles Times, published editorials calling for him to step down. The Ethics Committee announced a formal investigation. The California Bar Association expedited their review. The DOJ confirmed that multiple referrals were under consideration. Most damaging of all, Nancy Pelosi released a statement. "I am deeply troubled by the revelations presented during Deputy Director Bongino's testimony. Trust once broken cannot be easily repaired. Even Schiff's most loyal supporters in the media couldn't spin this. The evidence was too overwhelming, too meticulously presented, too damning." On the third day, Adam Schiff held a press conference. He looked haggarded, aged a decade in 72 hours. His statement was brief. "After reflection and consultation with my family, I have decided to take a temporary leave of absence from the Senate to focus on clearing my name. I remain confident that when all facts are examined, I will be vindicated." He took no questions. Within an hour, the Lieutenant Governor of California announced that the state would be exploring all options for ensuring full representation in the United States Senate. Translation. They were looking for ways to force him out. Dan Bongino, for his part, said nothing publicly. He returned to his duties at the FBI, running the day-to-day operations of the Bureau with the same quiet professionalism he'd shown in the hearing room. But those close to him noticed a small change on his desk next to pictures of his family and his service medals. He'd added a new item, a small framed quote that read, "Truth is like the sun. You can shut it out for a time, but it ain't going away. Elvis Presley." Below it, in his own handwriting, he'd added, "Bro rules apply DB." The message was clear. The days of consequence-free corruption were over. The FBI had found its teeth again. And anyone who thought they could attack the Bureau with impunity had better come prepared, because Dan Bongino always brought receipts.